Free, free, free. Free, free.
Free, free? Free, free, free. 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 Free.
Free.
Free.
All right, we're going to learn how to let go, and it may be for some of you that you're not just going to learn how to let go, you're actually going to let go. Today, you're actually going to make the greatest decision a human being can make, one that will lead to finding freedom like you've never experienced it before. Let me explain. So we're in this series called Free, and we're studying how God wants us to be free. He wants us to live a free life. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. God wants you to be free. He wants you to be free from destructive habits. He wants you to be free from addictions and brokenness. He wants you to be free from sin. Free not just from bad behavior, but also from those thoughts that just enslave us and trouble us and weigh us down and mislead us. Now, the first step in this process is I admit I'm powerless to control my tendency to do the wrong thing, and my life is unmanageable. And this is very important. This means not just that some of us are healthy and some of us are unhealthy. It's not it at all, actually. We're all in the same boat. The ground is real level in this place. Our liturgy for this first step has been, that's me. We want to be a that's me church. Instead of the liturgy, peace be with you, and also with you, we want to say, we're messed up. And all the people said, that's me, that's right. And then the second step is, I believe a power greater than myself can restore me to sanity. Now, part of what this means is I have to recognize I'm actually a little insane. I'm a little crazy. Apart from God, I'm actually not in my right mind. My mind will be filled with all kinds of crazy temptations, denial, rationalizing, and justifying. Only God can put me in my right mind. Now, both of these steps are foundational. They're both tremendously important. They both primarily involve how we think about stuff. But today we get to the third step. And the third step is an action step. It's a choice. This step does not just involve your mind, it involves your will. And I'll tell you at the outset, it looks like an act of great weakness and dependence, but it turns out to be the step that actually can put you in touch with the greatest power you'll ever know. And it's this: I choose to turn my life and will over to the care and control of Jesus. Now, there's an old phrase used to describe this step. It's used a lot in AA, but it actually goes way back before AA ever started. It's let go and let God. Let go of my fears, let go of my resentments, let go of my need to be in control of people, of traffic, of the weather, let go of my image, let go of what I did yesterday, let go of what might happen to me tomorrow, let go of the demand to have my own way, let go of my life. And I let God do for me and in me what I cannot do for myself. I let go. And this does not come naturally for us. Rick Warren, as a pastor, has taught a lot about this. He says his favorite story about this is a story about a guy who falls off a cliff and he grabs a branch on his way down. He's 500 feet down with another 500 feet to the bottom, and he's completely terrified. And he yells out, "Is anybody up there?" And the voice of God answers him, "I'm God, I'm here. I'll take care of you. Trust me. Let go of the branch." And the man yells, "Is there anybody else up there?" Letting go doesn't come naturally for us. We're afraid to let go. Some of you are hanging on for dear life by that branch and saying, "You know what, this isn't that bad. No problem, really, I'm fine." You see, the hard part is in between step 2 and step 3, you get to step 2 and you feel like everything is out of control, but you think, "I've got it. You know, I don't really need help. I can handle this." One of the silliest illustrations of self-reliance comes from the ridiculous movie Monty Python and the Holy Grail. If you've seen this movie, you know the scene I'm talking about when the Black Knight is in the forest and he gets an arm chopped off And he goes, it's just a flesh wound, right? Another arm gets chopped off and he's kicking the guy, right? He gets both legs chopped off, and so he's just like a stub. And he goes like, get back here, I'll bite your legs off, you know? And that's like how we operate. We realize we're in deep trouble, but we say, you know what, I'm in trouble and it's really breaking my heart, but I've got this. I don't know how else to say this, but you will never know freedom in your life until you recognize your spiritual bankruptcy and its brokenness inside of you. When you come to the point where you say, God, I'm ready to give you leadership of my life. I can't do this. I want to humble myself to the point of surrender. I need your strength to flow through me. I'm giving you leadership of my life from this moment on. And you do that day after day after day. It's one of my favorite verses from the Living Bible. The Apostle Paul writes, we felt we were doomed to die and saw how powerless we were to help ourselves, but that was good, for then we put everything into the hands of God, who alone could save us. This is a step you take where you realize the universe doesn't revolve around you. You acknowledge your self-centeredness, you step out of your self-reliance, you quit your attempts at self-help, you humble yourself, you quit playing God, you come off the throne of your life, you get out of the driver's seat, you surrender to the care and control of Jesus Christ. Here's the step again. I choose to turn my life and will over to the care and control of Jesus. Now you need to know this begins with the simple willingness to believe that Jesus is stronger than you are. This simple willingness to believe, it'll change the focus of your life. It begins to free you from this ever-tightening cycle of self-absorption and points you to help beyond your own inadequate strength. Some of you say, I want to believe, but my faith is just too small. And you need to know the story in Mark 9. A man comes to Jesus one day. Jesus, I know you can heal people. My son needs to be healed. And Jesus said, if you have faith, then he'll be healed. And the man was real honest. He said, Lord, I've got a lot of doubts. I want to believe. Would you help me with my unbelief? And Jesus says, that's good enough. And he heals his son. Maybe you need to say like this man, God, I want to believe, but would you help me with my unbelief? It's good enough. You say, but don't you have to have like a big faith? This is what Jesus said. If your faith is as small as a mustard seed, nothing will be impossible for you. It's not the size of your faith that matters. It's the size of what you put your faith in. It's the size of your God. You can have a giant faith and put it in the wrong thing and get no results. Faith is not the issue. The issue is what you put your faith in. A little faith in a big God will get big results. Don't let any of these things keep you from taking this step. Some of you may be like many of us who say, all right, but before I would ever let my life go or turn my life over or let go of my life to God, I want to know what kind of God he really is. And I think sometimes our childhood and family issues kind of cloud our picture of God. Sometimes the way we've seen our parents or what happened to us in our families gets transferred onto God. If your father was disconnected and uncaring, then you kind of tend to think that God is that way. If your parent was really hard-nosed and someone to be afraid of, then you tend to be afraid of God. Or if your father was abusive, you have this picture of God as an abusive father. And some of you think like no one really knows you. But you're wrong. God knows you. You say no one knows what I'm going through in my marriage. You're wrong. God knows. No one knows how hard I'm struggling to break this habit. God knows. No one knows how guilty and frustrated I feel when I make a promise and I fail over and over again. God knows. No one knows what it's like to come home from school and find your mom passed out on the couch. You're wrong. God knows. No one knows what it feels like to bury the person you love after 50 years of marriage. God knows. No one knows how afraid or how anxious or how worried or how tired or how depressed I get. God knows. Look what Psalm 56:8 says. This is one of the coolest verses about God. You have seen me tossing and turning through the night. You have collected all my tears and preserved them in your bottle. You have recorded every one in your book. You see, not only does God know, but God cares. He says in Isaiah 43:2, when you go through deep waters, I'll be with you. When you go through rivers of difficulty, you will not drown. When you walk through the fire of oppression, you will not be burned up. The flames will not consume you. Listen to me, you need someone stronger than yourself. You need someone bigger and better and smarter than yourself. You need someone to help you, to kind of pull you out, to walk with you. You can't do this by yourself. And if you will surrender your life and your will to his unfailing love and care and control, your sin, which is a big deal, will be forgiven. And you can start the process of becoming a new person who can walk free in the power and the grace of God. I learned a long time ago in my life that the greatness of a man or the greatness of a woman is determined by the measure of their surrender. For when you surrender your weakness to God, God will actually move in, and he's strong in you. He enables you to recover. He enables you to live life the way he intended you to live. Look at God's help in Ephesians 1:19 and 20. The Apostle Paul prayed this. I also pray that you will understand the incredible greatness of God's power for us who believe him. This is the same power, the same mighty power that raised Christ from the dead. He's saying that if God could roll away a stone in front of a tomb and bring a dead man back to life, he can bring your life back to you too. The greatness of a man, the greatness of a woman is determined by the measure of their surrender. Are you ready to surrender? What are you afraid of if you commit your life to Christ? What are you afraid will happen if you give God the complete care and control of your life? You say, I don't want anyone controlling me. Seriously. Like you're being controlled all the time. It's just that you choose who you're being controlled by when you let God take control of your life. I mean, you're controlled by the opinions of other people. You're controlled by the hurts that you can't forget. You're controlled by habits and hang-ups, by the way that your parents brought you up. Do you know what freedom is? Freedom is choosing who controls you. When you give your life to the care and control of Christ, he sets you free. He said, those who sin are slave to sins, but if you know the truth will set you free. And when you take this third step, you give up everything, and then you never had it so good. Because he takes what you've given to him, and he turns it around, and he gives it new meaning and new significance, new vitality. He gives it back to you in a whole new way. If you've been afraid to open your life to the care and control of Christ, that he might make you give up something, don't worry about the specifics of what he might ask you to give up. If you focus on the specifics, you'll never get to the greater decision, which will actually be the step toward freedom. Just come to God. God, I don't even know what it is that you want me to give up, but I know I want to be under your care. And so, God, here I am. Let him just take care of the rest. Don't worry about it. In the book of Proverbs, the writer says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, submit to him and he'll make your path straight. In other words, just let go. Let go of your need to have your way and let God direct your path. Another verse puts it like this. I love these words. Surrender your heart to God and stretch out your hands to him. Surrender your heart. Just stretch out your hands to him. Just let go and let God. A priest named Henry Nouwen, he became fascinated in the latter years of his life with a group of trapeze artists called the Flying Rodleys. And there was something about them, their courage, their soaring, their trusting, their dependence on one another. It just inspired him. And he's this guy who often felt awkward in his own body. And these were like athletes of great beauty and grace. And what they did struck him as kind of a parable for spiritual life, for life with God. This is what Henry Nouwen wrote. One day I was sitting with Rodley, the leader of the troop, in his caravan, talking about flying. And he said, as a flyer, I must have complete trust in the catcher. The public might think that I am the great star of the trapeze, but the real star is Joe, my catcher. He has to be there for me with split-second precision and grab me out of the air as I come to him in the long jump. How does it work? Nouwen asked. The secret, Rodley said, is that the flyer does nothing and the catcher does everything. When I fly to Joe, I have simply to stretch out my arms and my hands and wait for him to catch me and pull me safely over the apron behind the catch bar. You do nothing, Nouwen said, surprised. Nothing, Rodley replied. The worst thing the flyer can do is to try to catch the catcher. I'm not supposed to catch Joe. It's Joe's task to catch me. If I grab Joe's wrist, I might break them, or he might break mine, and it would be the end for both of us. A flyer must fly, and the catcher must catch, and the flyer must trust with outstretched arms that his catcher will be there for him. You see, my part, your part, is just to trust. It's to surrender. It's to give up your life. God's part is to catch. It's to hold on. And he'll do that for me, and he'll do that for you. He'll do what we cannot do for ourselves. Now, this is what people in Alcoholics Anonymous find as a literal fact. They find that when I try to stop drinking, when there is something that has a grip on me and I try to control it myself, I can't stop drinking by trying to stop drinking. It's critically important that the decision is in step 3 is not, I made a decision to stop drinking. That's not it. Now, the reason people get into 12 steps, into AA, is they want to stop drinking. But none of the steps involve the decision to stop drinking. I have to surrender my whole life. I have to surrender my whole will to God. And when I do that, I'm ready to receive the power to do what I cannot do. Now, this is precisely what the Apostle Paul found. This is from his letter to the church at Rome. I've read this before. This is the Message paraphrase. What I don't understand about myself is that I decide one way, but then I act another, doing things I absolutely despise. I can will it, but I can't do it. I decide to do good, but I don't really do it. I decide not to do bad, but then I do it anyway. My decisions, such as they are, don't result in actions. Something has gone wrong deep within me. I'm at the end of my rope. Is there no one who could do anything for me? Isn't that the real question? The answer, thank God, is that Jesus Christ can and does. You see, this step does not involve thinking about surrendering. A lot of times we're pretty good at thinking about stuff. This means actually surrendering. It's a decision. You know, I can understand all about God. I can believe the right stuff about God. Sometimes I can feel the right ways about God, but I can still shut God out of my life. We confuse the decision-making phase with the problem-solving phase. You know, back in 1963, when JFK announced publicly, we're going to put a man on the moon by the end of the decade, that was the decision. Had all the problems been solved when he made that decision? No. If you want to be a good manager, you know you never confuse decision-making with problem-solving. If you confuse them, you'll actually never make the decision. You have to make decisions, and then you have to solve the problems. Kennedy said, we're going to put a man on the moon. And then it was NASA's turn to figure out the solution to the problems. You make the decision, and then you solve the problems. I took my oldest daughter, Lily, to Tahoe last week. If we said, we're not going to go until all the lights are green, we would never go. If you wait to make sure that every stoplight turns green, you'll never go anywhere. You can't solve the problems first. You have to make the decision. I open my life to the care and control of Christ. I've got doubts. I've got questions, fears, worries. I don't know how it's all going to work out, but I know it's the right thing to do, so I'm going to do it. The most important thing I'll say to you today is this. The Christian life is a decision followed by a process. It's a decision followed by a process. It's the same with recovery. It's a decision followed by a process. And I'm talking today about the decision. And I want you to hear Beth's story about making that decision.
My name's Beth Miller, and I became a Christ believer when I was in my 50s. I spent my whole life living and practicing in the Jewish faith. I grew up in this conservative temple in the Bay Area, and even though I believed in God, I never had a personal and reverent relationship with Him, and I didn't think I actually even needed one. My parents are Jewish, and their parents are Jewish, and their parents were Jewish, and I came from this long line of Jewish people, and so to honor my family, I just continued on with my traditions and my faith, and I even presented that same way to my kids. But when I was 50, I was diagnosed with cancer, and I got my diagnosis about 3 weeks after my daughter had been diagnosed with a tumor that was in her spinal cord, and it had to be removed because of some complications she was having. So my husband and I made this decision together that we were going to focus solely on her needs and put my needs aside. I went through a really lonely, dark period, and for about 5 weeks, I kept this to myself. It was just between my husband and I. And finally one day, I remember going into his office in our home, and he was sitting there working, and I just sat down on the floor and I started crying. I was so broken. I remember saying to him, I can't do this, and I can't be alone through this. And although I had him, it wasn't enough, and I wasn't enough. And that evening, God intervened on my behalf. He prompted one of my best friends to give me a call. She asked me on our phone call, hey, I just want to know how I can pray for you. I had this moment of anxiety, like, why are you calling me tonight? Like, out of all nights and my weakest and most broken night. So through this conversation and sharing with her, she was the first person I opened up to, and we cried together, and we talked through this together, and we prayed together. And for the very first time in my life, I allowed my heart to open up, like this peace came over me. And I allowed myself to have this willing conversation to talk about God. And we didn't just talk about God, we talked about Jesus as the Son of God. And before, I never would have had that conversation. I wasn't open to it. I wasn't ready for it. My heart just had this shift. And we talked about the control I was trying to live by. And there was this freedom of just letting go. I could no longer control my health. I couldn't control my children's. I couldn't control my fears and my anxieties. They just took over me. I had to let go of some resentment that I knew I was facing because I was angry with my diagnosis and with my daughters. I had to let go of my fear that my parents and my husband and kids were going to think about me. It's like I opened up the Bible. I started reading it. I started living in the Word. I started reading scriptures and things like, do not lean on your own understanding. And I started leaning on His. I learned that giving up control and surrendering myself to God didn't make me weak. It gave me power to believe in something bigger than myself. When Pastor Matt talks about a meaningful life brings you joy, I can see my life. My kids can see my life. My husband sees my life. How much more meaningful and how much more purposeful my life is now that I'm a Christ believer, and how it's changed every relationship in my whole existence, even with my parents, who I was so fearful weren't going to accept my new ways. And everyone's been so loving and accepting, and I just have, God to thank for that. I have Blue Oaks to thank for that, and I have this community of people here at this church who not only walked beside me, but who've been there holding my hand and answering questions and lifting me up and cheering me on. And I just have to say, if you're not a believer, if you don't know Christ, let go of any worry or any fear that you might have with it, because it is so powerful and so enriching and so incredible. And I only wish that for you. So I say thank you, and I wish and prayer for you is that you can experience what I've been able to experience. Have a great day, and thank you for letting me share my story.
Now, I just want to get real personal with you. For some of you, you've never made that decision to let go. Some of you are in that very vulnerable moment right now. Will you have the faith to let go? Will you have the faith to trust that God will catch you? Will you make the decision to turn your life and your will over to the care and control of Christ? And if you've never done that, if you'd like to, if you understand what that decision involves, I want to invite you to do that today. Now, this does not mean what so many people think of when you think of Christianity or you think of your spiritual life. It does not mean I'm going to clean up my life. It does not mean like I'm going to try to do my life better, or I'm going to go to church more, or I'm going to start reading the Bible more. It means, God, I'm inviting you to take over my life, and I'm inviting you to clean it up. I actually can't do it on my own. I can't clean it up on my own. I keep clutching on to what I need to let go of. I keep doing what I'm trying not to do. There's a story about a mother of 8 from Maryland who was next door visiting her neighbor, and then when she returned home, she went into the living room where she saw her 5 youngest children huddled in the center of the floor on her new carpet, very much involved with something that was wiggly and squirmy. And the perplexed mother looked closer, and to her utter dismay, she discovered that her children were gathered around a family of skunks. In her horror, she just screamed, "Run, children, run!" And they did. They all grabbed a skunk and they ran. See, that's my condition. Like, I grab my selfishness and I run, or I grab my resentments and I run, or I grab my ego and I run. I grab my insistence of having my own way and I run, and I carry it with me. That's why self-improvement plans don't do the job. I must let go. Again, it's so important in AA that this third step is not a decision to stop drinking. People have discovered they can't stop drinking by aiming directly at trying to stop drinking. They have to aim at a much deeper life change. This is sometimes called the principle of indirection. And this is true not just of alcohol problems. One of the statements that, of people in the 12 steps is there are many problems besides alcohol that cannot be overcome by sheer willpower. I can't stop being proud by trying really hard to be humble. I can't defeat lust by trying to defeat lust. I can't stop lying by trying really hard to stop lying. I have to go deeper than that. I have to surrender. Surrender what? I have to surrender my life. I have to surrender my will. What does that mean? Well, to surrender my life means I commit to following Jesus, no matter what the particular outcomes are. Often people want to negotiate a deal with God where, I'm still in charge. I've not actually let go of my life, but I'll get help from him when I need him for my little projects. That's actually pseudo-surrender. It's not surrender. People will say things like, I tried trusting God, but he didn't give me the spouse that I really wanted. Or I trusted God, but he didn't give me what it is that I really wanted, so it didn't work. I tried trusting God, but he didn't take away my anxiety that was so painful for me, so it didn't work. It didn't work for me. In AA, anyone who says that today will be drinking tomorrow. See, to surrender my life means I'll keep following these steps. I'll keep doing a fearless moral inventory. I'll confess to God and to myself and to another person. I'll ask God to remove my shortcomings as humbly as I can. I'll continue meeting together in fellowship. I'm not going to give up on that. I'm going to serve others. I'm going to spread the message. See, it's not only where we're going in this series, it's where we're going with our lives. We have to follow Jesus one day at a time. We arrange our lives around these principles that came from Christ. And we do these steps not to earn brownie points with God, but because it's through this way of life that Jesus taught that we finally receive the power from God to do what we cannot do by ourselves, and that is find freedom. I surrender my life. God, I don't need anything else from you. There are no demands I'm making anymore. Whatever happens, I'll follow Jesus. It's your life now. I'm surrendering my dreams. I'm surrendering my ambitions, the stuff that I've been insisting on, what my feelings are. I'm just letting go of it all, God. I'm putting it in your hands. And then I surrender my will. I turn my life and I turn my will. Again, this is very concrete. It means that I seek to make my will conform to God's will. This means I learn in every situation to ask, God, what is your will for me in this moment? God, who can I serve? God, how can I be the man that you want me to be right here in this moment? And then in the next one, I surrender my need to have my own way. I surrender my demand to be in control. I surrender my attempt to run the world. Oddly enough, when I die, that's when I find life. I was worrying over some tasks this week, and a friend came barging into my office, just interrupted everything for just about 2 minutes, mostly just to connect. I think mostly just to say, I love you. And as they walked out of my office, a thought entered my mind. That was like a tiny bit of light from the kingdom of heaven. That's really what happened just in that moment. That was a little gift from God just coming down into my world, into my life. And then came this thought, Matt, you know what? You can just set down your worries. I realized my stupid worry, my obsession with my preoccupation about how this situation was going to turn out is not a lifeline. It was actually an anchor. It was killing me. I somehow think that if I could just stay attached to that, if I just like churn and worry and just carry it with me, it's going to solve something. That somehow my life is going to get better, but it's not. It just becomes this addiction. And this thought just came to me, Matt, it's not a lifeline, it's an anchor. It's killing you. It's dragging you down. You need to let it go. It was such a powerful moment. It's kind of humbling to admit it, but I just literally stood up at my desk and I just raised my hands up in the air and I just stretched out my arms to God and said, all right, God, I'm just letting go. And I gave him like a really good chance to catch me. Jesus, I'm tired of worrying about how things are going to turn out. I'm tired of worrying about my own stupid little life. I'm tired of worrying about what people will think of me. And it felt so good until I noticed someone was looking through the window at me and I just they thought I had lost my mind. And then I thought, well, you know what? That's good because I need to lose my mind and I need to get a new one. I need to get a better one. I need to let go and I need to let God. I turn my life and my will over to Jesus. One last observation as you're doing this. This involves a decision to turn my life and my will not just over to God, but over to the care of God. How do you know God cares? Because Jesus says he does. And Jesus knows. Like no one knows like Jesus knows. Again, the 12 steps wouldn't exist. AA would never have happened if it were not for Jesus and the little community that he led, that movement that he started. And some of you know about this at certain AA meetings to this day. They'll end that meeting by saying the Lord's Prayer. The Lord's Prayer that Jesus taught us to pray. Why do they do that? Because all 12 steps are right there in the teachings of Jesus and that prayer. Our Father who's in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Deliver us from evil because we admit we're powerless over our sin and our life is unmanageable. We need to be delivered. We came to agree that a power greater than ourselves could restore us. Our Father who is in heaven, who is all around us, and we made a decision to turn our lives and our wills over. Your kingdom come. Your will be done, not mine, including in my body. We did a fearless moral inventory. We admitted to God, ourselves, and to others exact nature of our wrongs. Forgive us our debts. See, Jesus is the one who shows us the way. Jesus himself is actually the way. Jesus actually did step 3 perfectly for us. When Jesus was facing the cross where he would die for my sin and your sin, he prayed to his Father, not my will, but yours be done. See, we don't do these steps by ourselves. Jesus does these steps with us. Jesus did this 3rd step perfectly for us. When Jesus was going to the cross where he would die for my sin and your sin, he prayed to his heavenly Father, Father, if it would be possible, take this cup from me. I'd rather not have to go through with this, but nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done. He turned his life and his will over to the care of his Father so that you could do that, so that I could do that. He's our friend who walks with us when it's time to let go. Now, I just want to ask you, have you abandoned your life to him? These are the words that haunted Henry Nouwen, that captivated him, that just thrilled him. He could never forget them. The flyer does nothing. The catcher does everything. The flyer must trust with outstretched arms that the catcher will be there for him. Nouwen said that when Rodley told him this with so much conviction, the words of Jesus crossed through Henry Nouwen's mind. Because when Jesus was about to give up his life, he said, Father, into your hands I commend my spirit. And he let go on the cross. And God's hands were strong enough to catch him. For us, this means trusting in the catcher. Don't be afraid. Remember that you are a beloved child of God. He will be there with you every day. When you come to your last day, he will be there. When you finally release that bar, he's going to be catching you. But don't grab onto him. He'll grab onto you. You just stretch out your arms, stretch out your hands, give him a good target, and just trust. Just trust. Now, I just want to give you a chance to make this decision today. And I just want to ask everyone here if you just bow your heads and close your eyes for a moment. If you've never done this before, I want to invite you to just make this decision to turn your life, to turn your will over to the care of God through Jesus Christ, through his life and through his teaching, through his death on the cross and his resurrection. And you can just do that by saying these words to God. Heavenly Father, I'm surrendering my life and my will to you today. I trust that you forgive my sins as a gift of your grace. I'm trusting that you will give me strength to live one day at a time, one moment at a time. I know I'm going to need your help. I'm trusting you to be with me in my living, and I'm trusting you to be with me in my dying. But today, God, I'm trusting my life and my will over to your care. God, from this day forward, as you help me, I make Jesus my forgiver, my teacher, my leader, my friend. Again, I'd like to ask everyone just to keep your eyes closed for a moment. Sometimes it helps to mark a moment like this with an action, with just doing something physically. And so if you want to, as an expression of this decision to surrender your heart, I just want to ask you to stretch out your hands toward God. Just stretch out your arms. I just want to invite you right now just to stretch out your arms, stretch out your hands, just give them a good target. Now just say this in your heart. Father, into your hands, I commend my spirit. I'm letting go. And I trust you, God. I trust you to catch me. I'm abandoning myself to your care today. And I'll just give you another moment for anyone who wants to do this right now. All right, you can put your arms down. Father, thank you that you are the catcher. Thank you that Jesus still shines through this world, that Jesus still sets people free. I pray especially for everyone today who's made this decision. I pray that you would pour out your grace, pour out your freedom into their lives. And we pray this in Jesus' name.